You bump the thermostat up a few degrees, you hear the furnace kick on down in the basement, and you stand by the vent waiting for that first wave of warm air. And what rolls out is cold, or barely room temperature, like the heat just gave up halfway. If that is what is happening at your house right now, there is a short list of things that cause it, and most of them you can fix yourself in the next 10 minutes. Here is the part that should make you feel better before we even start. The fact that air is moving at all tells you the blower motor works, so this almost never means your whole furnace is dead. It means the heat side either never lit or lit and quit, and the fan is just pushing around the cold air that was already sitting in your ducts. If you are getting barely any air at all, that is a different lane, usually the blower itself or a safety door switch that is not seated, but cold air that is clearly moving points straight at the heat side. I have crawled around enough furnaces and read enough service manuals to know which of these is a free fix you do standing right there and which one is worth a phone call. We are going to work from the cheapest and most common causes down to the ones that need a pro, so you do not pay anybody to flip a switch you could have flipped yourself. Before you touch anything, rule out the two situations that look like a broken furnace but are not. The first one is timing. When a furnace starts up cold, the burners light first and there is a built-in delay before the blower kicks on. Your ducts are also full of cold standing air that has to get pushed out before the warm stuff reaches you. So the first minute of cold air can be completely normal. The test is simple. Let it run a solid 5 to 10 minutes. If the air warms up within a minute or two and stays warm, nothing is wrong and you are just feeling normal startup. If it is still blowing cold after 10 minutes, or it warms up for a second and then goes cold again, that is a real problem, and you keep reading. The second thing that fools people lives on your thermostat. Look at the fan setting. If it is set to on instead of auto, the blower runs all the time, including the long stretches between heating cycles when the furnace is not making any heat at all. That moving room temperature air feels cold coming out of the vents, and people swear their furnace is broken when really the fan is just doing exactly what they told it to do. Switch that fan setting to auto so the blower only runs when the furnace is actually heating. This single setting is the most common reason people think their furnace died when it did not. While you are standing at the thermostat, check two more things. Make sure the mode is set to heat and not accidentally on cool. And make sure your target temperature is set a few degrees above whatever the room actually is right now, because the furnace will not call for heat if it thinks it is already warm enough. And if the screen is blank or faint, the batteries are dead. A fresh pair of batteries fixes a no heat call more often than people expect. So the thermostat is set right, you waited the 10 minutes, and the air is still cold. Now we get into the actual furnace, starting with the cause that is behind more cold air calls than anything else, the air filter. A clogged filter is the troublemaker here, and the way it causes cold air is sneaky. When the filter is choked with dust, it strangles the airflow the furnace needs to breathe. The heat exchanger heats up with nowhere for that heat to go, and it gets too hot. So a safety part called the high limit switch does its job and shuts the burners off to keep the furnace from cooking itself. But the blower keeps running to cool everything down, and now it is blowing unheated air all through your house. The tell for this one is that the furnace heats for a few minutes, then blows cold, then heats again, over and over. That on and off pattern is called short cycling, and a dirty filter is the #1 cause of it. Pull your filter out and hold it up to a light. If light barely passes through, there is your problem. Swap in a fresh one that matches the size printed on the cardboard frame, and while you are at it, walk the house and make sure furniture or rugs are not blocking the supply, and return vents. Filters run about $10 to $40, and you should be changing them every 1 to 3 months anyway. If you have an older furnace, and by older I mean built before roughly 2010, you might have a standing pilot light. That is the little flame that stays lit and lights the burners when heat is called for. If that pilot blows out, you get no heat at all. Look for the small flame near the burners. If it is out, there are relighting instructions printed right on the furnace, and it is usually a matter of turning the gas knob to pilot, holding the button down, lighting it, and keeping that button held for 30 to 60 seconds. If you relight it and it will not stay lit, the part called the thermocouple is failing, and that is a cheap fix, usually $10 to $25 for the part. Most furnaces made in the last 15 years have no pilot at all, so if yours is newer, skip this one. Now here is the one that feels like magic when it works because the furnace looks almost fine while it does it. If your burners light up, run for just a few seconds and then shut right back off while the blower keeps blowing cold. The usual suspect is a dirty flame sensor. That sensor is a thin metal rod that sits in the flame and confirms to the furnace that the burner's actually lit. Over time, it gets a thin coating on it, and once that coating builds up, the furnace can no longer sense the flame. So it assumes the burners failed to light, and it shuts the gas off as a safety move, even though everything lit perfectly. The fix is genuinely satisfying. Cut the power to the furnace at the switch on the unit or the breaker, because you are working near gas and electrical, and that step is not optional. Then pull the single sensor rod out, usually held by one small screw, and gently scuff the metal with fine emery cloth or light steel wool until it is clean, dull metal again. Wipe it off, put it back, and restore power. The whole job takes 20 to 30 minutes and a beginner can do it. If cleaning it does not hold, a new sensor runs about $80 to $250 installed. A close cousin of the flame sensor problem is a failed igniter. On modern furnaces, there is no pilot, and a glowing hot surface igniter lights the burners instead. When it cracks or burns out, you will hear the furnace try to start. The little draft fan will run, but the burners never light, so you get cold air or no real heat. Replacing it is borderline do-it-yourself, one electrical connector and a couple of screws. But the element is fragile and you should never touch the new one with bare fingers. One thing worth knowing here. After a few failed attempts to light, many furnaces go into what is called lockout and just stop trying. Cutting the power for 30 to 60 seconds and turning it back on resets it so it will try again. An igniter runs somewhere around 100 to 250 installed. If your furnace is a newer high-efficiency model, the kind with white plastic exhaust pipes instead of metal, there is one more common cold air cause worth checking. These units create water when they burn fuel, and that water drains out through a small tube and trap. If that drain clogs with gunk, the water backs up and trips a safety part called the pressure switch, and the furnace simply refuses to light. The clue is that you hear the draft fan running, but the burners never fire, often with a blinking error light on the control board. Clearing the condensate drain line and trap and making sure the intake and exhaust pipes outside are not blocked by snow, ice, or a bird nest will often bring it right back. That outside pipe getting buried in snow is a classic midwinter no heat call. There is also the simple matter of gas. If the furnace is trying to light and getting nothing, make sure the gas shutoff valve at the furnace is open, and notice whether your other gas appliances like the water heater or stove are also out, which points at a supply problem rather than the furnace itself. And this is the one hard safety rule of the whole video. If you smell gas, that rotten egg smell, do not flip any switches and do not troubleshoot anything. Just get everyone out of the house and call your gas company from outside. The same goes if your carbon monoxide alarm is sounding. Get out, call for help, and do not go back inside. A cracked heat exchanger can leak carbon monoxide, so a working detector near where you sleep is not optional in a house with a gas furnace. One last scenario that confuses people. Sometimes the air is genuinely warm right at the furnace but arrives cold or lukewarm in the far rooms. That is usually leaky or uninsulated ductwork running through a freezing attic, crawl space, or garage, bleeding the heat out before it reaches you. Sealing the joints you can reach with foil tape or mastic, and wrapping the ducts in cold spaces with insulation takes care of that one. So here is how you actually work this when you are standing in a cold house. Start with the free stuff. Set the thermostat to heat, fan on auto, temperature up, fresh batteries. Wait to 10 minutes to rule out normal startup. Then pull and replace that filter because it is the most likely culprit by a wide margin. If the furnace lights and dies within seconds, kill the power and clean the flame sensor. If it is an old unit, check the pilot. If it is a high efficiency unit running the draft fan but never lighting, clear the condensate drain and check the outside pipes. And if you have ruled all of that out, or you are staring down gas valves, control boards, and blower motors, that is your line to call a pro. especially on any furnace 15 years or older where a big repair starts to rival the cost of replacement. I have dropped the filters, the flame sensor cleaning supplies, and a carbon monoxide detector in the description so you are not guessing on sizes. Walk through it in that order, cheapest first, and most of you are going to be standing in warm air long before you ever pick up the phone.